welcome to Monday Mug Mentions, week number 32. I can't believe we're 32 weeks into this. It is a lot of fun. Over the course of a cup of coffee, we chat about things in the tabletop industry that are interesting. Um, this weekend, I am looking forward to, or sorry, this week I'm looking forward to talking about this past weekend, as well as just some things I've been noticing going on in the industry lately. I hope everyone had a fantastic weekend, is having a great start to your week. I see a number of names popping up on the Facebook feed over here. So good to see you all. Let's go ahead and say hello. Mom, first one in. Good to see you, Mom. Zach, Leo, Michael, Randy, Alex, Steven, Hunter, Eric, Daniel, Rob. So good to see all of you. Thank you for joining. It's really, really nice to be greeted first thing in the afternoon by a bunch of awesome people. So I am drinking a cup this week of Brewed Awakenings House Blend. We've had Brewed Awakenings Eye Opener Blend before, and it was okay. This one's pretty good. They're also right down the street from where we live, so it makes it very easy to go get some beans, which I was in a rush today. I have been very busy lately, so let's see. Daniel, thank you for joining us. Yeah, got to get a cup. Everyone needs a cup of coffee, and if you don't have coffee, just have yourself a beverage this morning. It's always good. Yeah, this is tasty. Their house blend is a pretty normal house blend of like a few light beans and a whole bunch of darker beans. Nothing like super special about it, but it's tasty. I mean, it's a good cup of coffee. I'm going to enjoy drinking it this week. Um, I've had 31 different types of coffee as of this week because we had one repeat. I have got to say that is a lot of different types of coffee, and there is a wide range of tastes and sort of ways that they affect you. Also, some of them have like immediate caffeine effects versus other ones have long-term caffeine effects. So I thought that was something interesting about the different coffees I've been drinking. If any of you have a favorite coffee I haven't tried yet, I would really like to hear about it, and I would love to try your favorite coffee. Usually I like whole bean, but I'm totally up for drinking Maxwell House or whatever it is that you like to drink on the show and tasting it and trying it out. I won't judge you, I promise. I have had just about all ranges of coffee, and I see some difference in them, but I like coffee, period. I drink airplane coffee, which I'm told you're definitely not supposed to do. So, all right, all that being said, let's get into it this week. We've got a few different topics to talk about. Some of my favorite games of all time come up this week. I'm really happy about that. So let's get into it. I'm trying to decide whether to go tabletop or video game first. I think this week video game first seems good because it's really exciting in terms of a video game. Zach, I wouldn't judge you. Even if it was regular old Folgers, I'd be fine, man. I have no judgment about coffee, even pumpkin spice lattes. Daniel Zayas and James Hudson, I think they're just fine. I just like giving you grief for the fun of it. I think that if you enjoy a delicious beverage, you should enjoy it no matter what you are drinking. So, well, Daniel, enjoy your meeting. Thank you very much for popping in and saying hello. All right. So the games I want to talk about this week. The first game is James is happy because he thinks I was actually judging him probably for his pumpkin spice. No, by all means, you drink what you want. Oh, horchata. So there's Rob. I love horchata. It's fantastic. I used to drink it in San Antonio at a little spot called Rodeo de Jalisco number 32. And no matter how many times the San Antonio Health Department tried to shut that little place down, we went back. We had the horchata. We had the nachos. It was amazing. I missed that spot. The first game is called Trials HD, and rather than try to explain it, it's always better if we just pop our little screen up over here, boop, and then we put up a little video for you, and you can see what it is. So Trials is a motorcycle racing game where you're just racing on your own on sort of a 2D, like it's a 3D plane, but it kind of keeps you locked into a 2D path. You'll see what I mean here in a second if you see the game start to take off. Essentially, you're just trying to move forward. That's the goal. You want to do it at a faster rate than your previous run or other people. The whole point of the game is it's sort of a racing game, right? But you're not really against other people until you kind of know what their times are, plug into like a global leaderboard. So you'll see this one's a fun one. I made sure we got a couple of fun ones, and this one's called Trials Evolution. This is gold. I think there's a ton of Trials games. They're really popular because they're a lot of fun. It's super fun to ride a bike and flip around and do all sorts of crazy things and crash. You can restart from where you fall down for the most part, like at a checkpoint. Some of the I will admit some of the later Trials levels will get to a point where they're so difficult you may have to take a break from the game or just not be able to pass those. So it's there is a skill level that just goes continually up in Trials. These are beginner levels, and I hadn't done them in quite a while. I had not played Trials in quite a bit. This is one of my favorite games, though, in terms of on the Xbox 360, I think it first came out. I played this for hours. Rob, so good to see you. John, so good to see you. You're never late. You can stroll in whenever you want. This is just a casual coffee chat every Monday. So, the whole point of the game is just to move forward. You'll see I finished one, I think, there, and then I'm going to rerun the same one and try and go faster than I did the previous time. This is just a very simple thing that players can understand. I want to do better than previous. It's inspired by Excitebike, Zach. It's super inspired by Excitebike, and I think that was a lot of inspired by Excitebike. And it's essentially like a 3D-esque version of Excitebike, I would say, except that you don't have other players on the road. There is a multiplayer where you have 4 players along as well, but that's besides the point. It is one simple rule. Don't crash and get to the end. I guess that's 2 rules, but don't crash and get to the end. That is simple enough for anyone to understand. The beginner levels, you can sort of go through and have fun playing. The later levels require an immense amount of skill and very difficult hand movements to be able to pull off. And it's just a really, really satisfying game when you start playing it and getting good at it. It's one of those games where it's not a matter of just memorizing a level or doing something like that. Your skill floor actually does come up as you play the game, and you'll find that you're much better at the earlier levels. It's also just fun to fly through the air on a motorcycle in a video game where you actually wouldn't, in this case, you'd break your spine and you'd be dead if you just tried that jump. But in this case, you're having fun because it's a video game. And I really think it's a fun way to do a sort of solo racing game. You're against yourself. You're going up against your own sort of, ghost at times. So you can race against your previous ghost and see if you can beat your own times. I love games that put you up against yourself. So you're trying to beat your own previous score. I think that's a really satisfying mechanism. It's not take that. It's I'm trying to get better than what I did the time before, and I really, really, really enjoy that. So that's Trials, and it's a fun game. If you've never played it, I would definitely say check it out. If you have pretty much any console, Trials HD, I think Trials Evolution. There's a bunch of different Trials games, but if you like little racing games and you like games where you can do better than previously, Trials is a really fun one. So we will start talking then about Tokaido, which is today's game that I want to talk about in terms of the tabletop. And I have plenty of pictures of Tokaido because it's a beautiful game. I also have my copy right here. So if you can't see, that box is just white like an Apple Store with Tokaido right here in the middle. It is a beautiful game with beautiful, beautiful artwork. A ton of really, really nice looking. It is one of the most beautiful games that I think I have in my collection, just based on how nice the art looks. Once you take it out of the box, the artwork is still nice looking. Everything is just really, really got a nice aesthetic to it. But the point of Tokaido is to move forward, just like Trials HD. The only point is to move forward. You just take your pawn and move it forward. Everyone will stop at 4 of the ends, and there's some different reasons you want to stop at different places that'll get you more points at the end of the game. But the entire rule set of the game is move your person forward. If you are in the back, you are the next person to go. I absolutely love the simplicity of that. I think it's one of the most clever mechanisms that you can use in the game, is to say if you're at the back, you're first. That's it. The person who's at the very back is the first player who's going to go next in this game. And there is a nice mechanism to keep that from getting out of control, which is that the spaces fill up. So you've got to move ahead of the other players that are there. It is just a really satisfying game, easy to teach. So all of those things combined make it one of the games that's just got this really clever mechanism of just move forward. at the end of the game, we're going to total up what we've got. And one of my favorite things about Takedo is these panoramas you put together in it. So if you collect, the panorama pieces, you take one after the next, and they build this picture. I mean, everything about the game is, like I said, really beautiful. The artwork is beautiful. It puts together a great, great, great aesthetic while you're playing. I think that's just something that more designers / publishers should pay attention to, is making a beautiful, beautiful final product. So, let's see here. Steven. So Steven mentions the collector's edition. So here's a picture of the regular edition with the pawns, and then here I'll give it a second. Again, the board is beautiful. Even the regular edition. That's what I have, is the regular one, and it's a perfectly good game. It's wonderfully beautiful. However, Steven is correct. He says he hasn't played the collector's edition, but he did get it. And this is the pre-painted miniatures set that comes with the collector's edition. I would love a copy of that at some point in my life, but the prices that I've seen it for when it's been available are of course, probably worth it, but a little obscene to me. So, personally, so it is one of the prettiest looking collector's editions I've ever seen. If you have not seen the app, they did not just take pawns or even cutouts of these miniatures for the app. The Takedo app on my phone, if I remember correctly, has a fully sort of 3D scene for each space you go to, animated with different things glistening, and each of the creatures has movement, or each of the characters has movement animations built in. Normally, that's not what you get for a board game adaptation. It is a really, really clever board game adaptation to the app as well. So, I mean, Takedo, it deserves that treatment, I think. But it's not common that you see a game get, animations for each character and nice new 3D scenes set for each spot that you land on. I mean, it was really incredible to see that in the app as well. So Takedo is a fantastic game. Again, so simple. Just move forward. If you're the person at the very back, you're going to go forward. Everyone stops at the 4 ends. So the last person to reach the end is going to be the first person to go the next turn. I mean, I love it. It is one of my favorite games. I haven't gotten to play it in a while, so I've got mine out, and I'm going to probably see if I can get a game in with my family today, because this is a game you can even take and show your 4-year-old how to play, because it is that simple. It's your turn. Where would you like to go? So, all right, that is Takedo. I'm sure most of you have heard of it. It's not a super small or indie game or anything like that, but it really fit the idea today of just moving forward. Both of these games have that simple sort of, you know what you're supposed to do. It's intuitive. I just want to move forward. How do I do it the best? Can I do it better than I did it last time? And I really, really enjoy those sort of, easy situations to handle, like on a mental level, but also when they look pretty, like both of these games do. It's really nice when things look nice and are simple. It just makes for a really good experience, and I'm learning more and more that simplicity is a huge, huge part of making games that are open to a huge and wide and vast audience versus maybe a more niche audience, or just hobby gamers versus maybe appeal to the masses, which is something that maybe I think we'd all like to do as game publishers. So, Takedo's fantastic. Speaking about thinking about board games and about how board games work, I want to talk a little bit about the Board Game Design Lab Ignite conference this weekend. I was very, very fortunate to get to go speak. I spoke from this chair right here, and it was an online video conference, and it's very cool. You can actually still go, I think, and get a ticket to BGDL Ignite conference on. This is Gabe Barrett with Board Game Design Lab. You can get his. You can get a ticket and watch all of the panels over again, so they'll be up for a while. They are really, really fantastic. So, Martin, so good of you to see. So good to see you. Steven, yeah, it's a great game for families, I think. Yuri, so good to see you as well. Yeah, I agree. It's a really, really fun game. So I will let you guys argue about the monkeys. The BGDL Ignite conference had a really cool mix of speakers. I was among them. It was very, very cool. I actually started the day off. Gabe did an intro, and then at 10 in the morning, I did a talk about small publishing, some tips, some things we've learned, some mistakes we've made, kind of like just some general hurdles and things that you might want to think about if you're getting into the industry and getting into small publishing and doing it yourself. So it was a really, really great chat. The feedback and questions let me know that people were actually paying attention. It was very comforting, and I felt like we had a great talk. And then I would right after me. I'm glad this was the order, not the reverse, because I would have been even more nervous. But right after me was Jamie Stegmaier of Stonemaier Games, the owner and designer of Scythe and Scythe. I'm trying to learn how to say it the way he says it. Scythe. I've always said the word scythe, but it's Scythe. And it is really an honor to even be included in a panel with Jamie. He's one of my idols in the industry. I am a huge fan of everything Stonemaier does. So that was super. I was nervous, but it was also really cool. One of those mixtures of emotions moments. So also in the afternoon, Cassie Friedman talked about working with game reviewers and how to work with them in a way that gives them a reasonable amount of time and all the other things that you need to do to be prepared to send them a prototype and stuff like that. And it was a really, really informative talk, really incredible. I don't know if I have the order right. I believe it was either, I think it was JR was next. He had developing like a game like a boss, and he had a few things in there that were great. For me personally, I was able to use those to totally understand like a lot of the things he was saying. And one of the things he said is if you're in the middle of designing a game and you're having issues, try killing the thing you love the most about it. And we're having this sort of what I would call sort of a hook crisis with one of the games we're working with. The hook is like almost there, but it doesn't feel totally there. And so the one thing that I love the most about the game that I almost thought was the hook, we're going to rip that out of there and see what we can do to develop on top of that, and maybe that solves some of those problems. So I really appreciate JR's advice in terms of developing and ways to get over like little hurdles that you come up with. It was really it was a really informative talk, and it was really great. Let's see here. Carla talked about getting the most out of game design time, and that was incredible. Things like shutting off your phone and just finding times that you're going to work, not trying to start. This one's huge. Not trying to start a 4-hour project when you only have 30 minutes to work. Like, be realistic about the project you're going to start. I do this all the time. I'll start designing a game when I have to leave in 25 minutes. That is such a bad thing to do, because then you're, I just want to get all these ideas down real quick. And she made some great points about what you need to do is you need to be realistic about what your chunks of time are. And if you want to design, she also said to get a design space, which I think is such a good idea. There's some incredible, that's just a tiny smidgen of what I learned this weekend from that conference. So you totally should go check out the Ignite conference if you didn't yet. Tony Miller gave us amazing prototyping tips and tricks and things that we could do to just quickly prototype and get a proof of concept. And I believe what we call MVP, minimum viable prototype, in the industry is getting it on the table and playable to see if the thing works. I like to think of it as a vehicle. A lot of times, even like a car, but I like to think of it as a vehicle, and so I'll call it, you got to get the engine running, and that's just getting the prototype going. And if the engine runs, then you got to put the wheels on, and then that's making sure it all flows right and it actually moves down the road, right? And then the final thing for me is, of course, you got to put on the body parts and then the paint, and that's all the real detail that goes into vehicles, right? Like, it's mostly just an engine, a drivetrain, some wheels, and then you're going to need a way to create power, fuel, and electricity. That's not a whole lot, but the majority of a car is the details, the paint job, then down to the doors and where the door handles are, and where the little compartments are for different things for your sunglasses, where the radio is, all that sort of stuff. And I think that if you think about a game in that way, it tends to help me okay, well, we've got the engine there, let's put the tires on, and it's sort of a building process. So it was the way that Tony broke down prototyping is definitely get your engine running before you try to put a whole body on the car, and that's such a smart idea. That's really what you should be doing if you're a game designer, is getting the engine running right to start with. Sen, I'm gonna mess Sen's name up, but I've tried it. Sen Fung Lim. He's taught me how to say it, and I've said it wrong even after that multiple times. So I apologize, Sen. I love you very much. Did something called Playtesting Like a Pro, and it was an amazing breakdown of ways you can improve your playtesting and get more data out of it. And I'm not going to spoil any of the awesome stuff there, but really good advice about how to get more out of your playtesting from Sen. And then Daniel Zayas did an amazing talk about Kickstarter trends and things that you need to know in the industry if you're going into Kickstarter. I'm pretty sure that it's things that if I didn't know Daniel and hadn't had him work on our campaign, I never would have learned. So it's like amazing that he's sharing those with other people. It's without his advice, we never would have succeeded on Kickstarter at all. I can 100% guarantee that. So it's again, the Ignite conference is totally worth your time if you're a creator, because the things mentioned there are things that not only did I pay a consulting fee for, but I think are imperative for you to learn as a designer. So I think that's for the most part everything about BGDL, other than I was just thrilled to be a part of it. Gabe Barrett is a good friend, and I think he has an amazing thing going with Board Game Design Lab. It is one of the most I think it is probably close to the most effective board game design podcast or community that exists right now. It really is a useful tool. And if you're a board game designer, it's also a great gut check for figuring out, if what you're doing is the right path, or even just bouncing ideas off of other designers. So, all right. I think that is about it, but it was an amazing conference. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely suggest it for anyone interested in board game design or publishing, or just hearing about how the industry works on that back end. I think it was amazing. I was really, really, really pleased to be a part of it. So thank you, Gabe, again for having me. It was still sort of surreal to me that I was able to be on a panel in the same conference as Jamey Stegmaier. There's a little bit of like a dream aspect to that. It's kind of crazy. I don't believe it. It's kind of weird, but I'm very, very, very honored to have been a part of that conference. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. Yes, the panels are available, I think, on the website. I believe you can still get a ticket and then watch them anytime throughout the year. My understanding is this will be a yearly conference. So in the future, if I'm ever invited back, I'll be more than willing to come back and talk about more mistakes I'm sure I've made. So yes, I am a huge fanboy, Jeff Johnson. That's correct. So I was a gamer first, publisher second. I always say that. So, all right. The last thing I want to talk about is something that's been going on in Facebook threads for like the last 2 weeks, and it's something I definitely struggled with early on. I think I understand why people struggle with it totally. I also think that if people want to succeed, they need to listen to what I'm about to say to a certain extent, because it's really, really, there's some things going on in Kickstarter threads between Kickstarter creators and also just on Kickstarter pages where you'll see, and I've talked about this a little bit before, is how to interact with your backers. But in this situation, this is just, with Kickstarter feedback or feedback in general, even playtesting feedback, accepting it gracefully. This is very, very important. There are a few ways you can accept feedback. Gracefully, in my mind, is the best. Out of all of them, the worst way is to point for point counter any feedback that a person gives you or a group of people give you. And this is something I see on a regular basis. So you do not get into the ticky-tack back and forth. Oh, well, you think that's bad. Well, we justify it via, X comment. And then the next person has this criticism. Oh, well, we justify that via X comment. That just begins to look like you didn't really look for advice. You were just looking for validation, which I think is what a lot of people are doing when they look for feedback. Initially, then when we looked for feedback, we were certainly looking for validation. I find that that's actually, while it's nice to have validation, it's good to have people tell you that your product is good. What you need to hear before launching a product, what you need to understand is what the problems with that product are. If there are problems that anyone perceives to be issues or problematic with your product, and they tell you those, regardless of whether or not you care to consider them in your game, the way you respond to that is very important. So one way to respond to somebody saying that maybe your game's too risky, if you have a certain theme that's possibly too risky, is saying, I understand this game is not for everyone's taste, and I will totally take that under consideration. I really appreciate you taking the time to comment on my project. That is much better than, well, if you don't like it, don't buy it. or and it's the same thing. You're saying the same thing, but there's two ways to say it, and the first way is much more polite. It also comes off as showing that you have much more of a sensitivity to the fact that some people may not enjoy what it is that you just published, and that's fine. Not all games are for all gamers, but if you don't know what those issues are going in, you're doing yourself a disservice to know that a certain part of the market doesn't like things that you do. So Rob said, I tried so hard not to fanboy when I talked to Jamie. I totally understand that. Hi, Brian. Good to see you. Rob says the problem with Record is that I don't have it yet. That's also the problem for me. Trust me, Rob, I promise. Jen says you need to have a mindset that feedback is a gift. This is great. You can then review and decide. Sometimes the feedback includes a solution you don't agree with, but it may uncover a problem. That's perfect. That's essentially, Jason says he's overdoing the Medea Hallelujah GIF. Thank you, Jason. So Jen's point is exactly. You need to have a mindset that feedback is a gift. We've all gotten gifts we maybe don't need. Maybe you set that feedback off to the side and you don't use it, but you accept it gracefully. You don't go, oh, no, I don't like this, thanks, and push it back at someone. That's a great way to think of it. Every piece of feedback is a gift. I'm going to steal that, Jen, I promise you. That is really, really good. Martin says a good product can be made great by listening to feedback. Good games are more common. Now you do not want to make a great game. Case in point, first campaign we ran for Record, among other issues, did not fund. We can blame all sorts of things we want. Among other issues, it did not fund. The second campaign funded in 7 hours after listening to the feedback of about 250 or 300 people who voted on our box cover and a few other minor issues. Those things changed in a course of 4 months, and we funded in 7 hours. That's feedback driven. It was a gift. Like you said, it was free advice from our fan base who said this is what we would prefer. The things that worked in that, we used. The things that didn't, we didn't use. We didn't tell anyone that their feedback was good or bad. Certain feedback was put right into the game because it made so much sense, and other feedback had to be considered. And that's a really, really smart way to operate. I think that Jen may have nailed it so well, I don't even have a better way to say it. Accept it as a gift. If you don't need to use that gift at the time, put it aside. You don't have to tell someone that you don't appreciate their gift. I really, really like that. I think that's going to be my new philosophy on it. So Brian says also, I feel like different feedback applies differently to each campaign. If you're commenting on a large Kickstarter versus a little guy, I think that if we're doing it in the realm of tabletop Kickstarter advice forum or something like that, which is where a lot of what I've seen recently is going on, I think you should be willing to accept the most brutal of feedback, and brutal is the wrong way to. Brutal means like someone's trying to be mean, right? But honest and blunt feedback to the point of this is what a consumer is going to think about this product, and this is what a consumer is going to have feelings about this product. Also, you can put on your consumer hat. Sometimes and say, as a consumer, I don't really appreciate this product, and that's fine. I had a number of people tell me that Record was not for them because they don't know anything about guitar and it's not really an interest to them. Some people still supported me because they are friends of ours or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, I said, if you don't care about guitars, if you don't want, if you don't care about large, strategy games at all or guitars, probably not a great game for you, and that's not going to hurt my feelings at all. It's a very important thing to realize that certain people have different tastes. So accepting that feedback for what it is definitely the case. But when it comes down to new feedback on artwork quality or text being readable or things like potential issues with the marketing as a whole, I think you should be open to accept just really anything someone's saying to you, and then again with a grain of salt you can just pass it over. I think that's great. Mom said Christmas sweaters as a gift sometimes. Exactly. Sometimes you get a Christmas sweater. That's good for one day a year. Sometimes that advice you got is good for one day a year and you may not need it. And I think that essentially that's what we all have to be able to parse is what do you need and what do you not need. I think that's what when I talk about development and design, this is the other thing is like this is how we play the development and design tennis at Yanaguana, is that I'll generally design a basic concept, bounce it off to Andrew, who will develop it and say, these are all the problems you need to fix. or collectively at this point we need to fix. But then you bounce it back to the designer who tries to fix those problems, sends it back to the developer who breaks it again, and you continue to try and make a better product. So that's what we generally do in our process, but until we brought in outside people, we had a very, very hard time on Kickstarter. And by outside people, I mean the feedback of the people who had backed the initial campaign. Specifically, what was wrong with this campaign? What didn't you like? What did you think we could have done better? And we listened to a lot of that advice, incorporated a large majority of it was incorporated into the final product, and we were able to fund in 7 hours on our second time out. It's a major, major difference if you just listen. So I think that's really the majority of what I have to say about it, but I think listening gracefully and accepting it and just saying, okay, thank you is good. And in one particular case, I saw multiple people from one project handle it both wrong and then correct. I believe the creator in this situation handled it very well and said, no, I'm fine with everything y'all are saying. I understand what you're saying. I disagree with it maybe, but I'm totally open to hearing it. And another person from that same project did what I mentioned before, which was sort of tick for tack, trying to defend each point that someone had a criticism of the game. And I mean, it was very interesting to me to see both the juxtaposition of, in the same team, both two entities handling it both, exactly the way you should versus exactly the way you shouldn't. So it's very, very interesting to me that this is something that we still have to talk about on a regular basis. But as more and more people come into the Kickstarter world, I don't think it's going to stop. I really don't think we're going to have to stop talking about the fact that if you get feedback, take it well, take it on the chin the way you should. Be strong about it. You're going to have to put this thing in front of a market of people who do not know you whatsoever and may tell you visceral, awful things. And the bigger your campaign gets, the worse things are said to you. I have seen it with a lot of my peers and friends. The larger your campaign is, the more of an entity you are versus a human being who's making a thing. And the general public will generally be a little bit more willing to be blunt and less polite with an entity versus a person making a game, in my experience. So that's about all I have on Kickstarter Critics. I really appreciate y'all being here. I know that was probably a little bit long, but it's something that has been going on in the feeds lately, and I really think everyone should pay attention to being open to hearing advice and parsing it as you want, but accepting it gracefully as a whole. So I see a few things mentioned here. Jason says, you're going to sit there and tell me that listening to people who want to buy my product is a thing I should do? Yes, it is. Yes, that's correct. And Steven says everything's branding. Derek says, I'm glad you phrased this as accepting instead of taking. That could be taken the wrong way. No, it's accepting. You accept it and you do. Jen nailed it on accepting it as a gift. That is exactly the way you should put it. I think that is the absolute perfect way to put it, is that you would never, if somebody gave you a bottle of wine and you didn't like that type of wine, you wouldn't go, oh no, have this back. You'd go, thank you. And you'd figure out something else to do with it. That's, you give that bad advice to somebody else later down the line. That's exactly. Joseph says, as funny as tongue-in-cheek as that is, it's actually a point that needs to be said. So many people, I think, design games for themselves and not for an audience. Yeah, so that's part of what I do outside of Yanaguana Games, is I will help turn an idea into what is a marketable product. And that is a very, very fun thing to do no matter what you're working with. Once you learn how that works and what consumers respond to and things like that. And I'm still learning constantly. I am very, very much not the authority on anything like that, but I do enjoy finding ways to find a product's path into the market to where it's going to be experienced by the most people who will enjoy it. So I really appreciate y'all being here. Steven says you really have to pay attention to that. Yeah, you do. I think that's important in game design. So thank y'all so much for being here. This has been one of the best weeks. I love all of the chat. It has been so nice to engage and talk with you. This has been, my mouth is worn out from talking on the Board Game Design Lab, and then this week. It's a lot of my face on the internet. So I will give you a break until next week. Thank you all for being here. I hope you're enjoying a great cup of coffee and that you have a fantastic week. If you're designing games, I hope they move forward. If you're playing games, enjoy them. All right, thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.